Hey everyone, I'm Kirsty and I work for the Scottish Youth Parliament. We are the democratically elected voice of Scotland's young people. At SYP, we're in the process of developing our next youth manifesto and we want to hear the views of young people across Scotland. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are and how you can help us to inform Scotland's political parties on what changes young people would like to see in the next parliamentary term. So in today's session, we'll cover a brief introduction to the Scottish Youth Parliament, who we are and why we exist. We'll be asking you to complete our manifesto survey, which will inform our work over the next 5 years. And we'll go through a few of the questions that our survey will ask you about so that you know what to expect. So first of all, what is the Scottish Youth Parliament? So elected members of Scottish Youth Parliament, or MSYPs, represent young people all over Scotland. Elections are held every 2 years, and anyone aged 14 to 25 can stand as candidates to become MSYPs. So MSYPs are elected to represent young people in every constituency in all 32 local authorities across Scotland. And we also have 11 MSYPs who represent national voluntary organisations. So the role of an MSYP is to ensure that the voices of young people are heard in the development of policies that affect them. MSYPs build strong positive relationships with local and national decision makers. So we have a strong collective voice through which we can influence real change. Our recent national campaigns, which were designed and delivered by young people, have really driven historic changes in society, such as the lowering of the voting age to 16 in Scotland, marriage equality, and increasing financial support for young carers. So today we are going to be asking for your help. So between now and the 19th of September, we would like your views to inform our 2021 to 26 manifesto, which will be called From Scotland's Young People. So as the democratically elected voice of Scotland's young people, the issues we focus and take action on come directly from the concerns raised by 12 to 25-year-olds across the country. So by sharing your views in this consultation, you will directly shape our work over the next 5 years, as well as help us inform Scotland's political parties on what changes young people would like to see. So in our survey, you will be asked for your opinion on a range of statements, and these have been selected by MSYPs after consultation with a wide range of young people and youth organisations. So all of the statements which receive over 50% agreement will become official SYP policy and will enable us to take action on them. For statements where there is more than one option, every option which receives more than 50% agreement will be included in our resulting calls. So all you have to do is answer each question with agree, disagree, or don't know. So we need as many of you as possible to complete the survey in order to give our manifesto a strong mandate to represent the views of Scotland's young people. Last time, over 72,000 young people responded to our survey, so we really hope we can keep that momentum going. So I'm going to take you through a few of the important subjects that we'll ask you about in the survey, just so that you know what to expect. So one important topic that you'll be asked about in the survey is education and lifelong learning, which will cover issues like funding for the education system, addressing LGBT bullying in schools, and investment in college and university welfare services. So for example, a question you might be asked here is, to increase productivity, well-being and attendance, the school day should start no earlier than 10 a.m. for all secondary school pupils in Scotland. So have a think about whether you agree, disagree, or don't know. So just to give you a bit of context on this argument, some people might say that if the school day was built more realistically around the sleep schedule of young people, students would be more likely to show up to school, they'd be more productive as a result of getting longer sleep, and they would generally be healthier as a lack of sleep wouldn't have a chance to build up and affect their health. But those who argue against that might say that a 10 a.m. start wouldn't properly prepare young people for life after school. And it also might cause problems for working parents and carers who can't provide transport to school at 10 a.m. It could also be argued that the solution to tiredness at school is actually to get to bed earlier rather than to make the school day start later. So another topic on our consultation is justice. So this covers issues like the age of criminal responsibility, the rights of young people in the criminal justice system. So for example, young offenders up to the age of 18 years old should not be imprisoned, and rehabilitative alternatives to detention should be put into practice. So have a think. Do you agree, disagree, or maybe you're not quite sure? So rehabilitative alternatives to prison focus on restoring a person back to health and everyday life. So those alternatives might include things like educational programs, community work, treatment, or therapeutic programs. So arguments for those alternatives might include the safety of young people, as about half of children say they don't feel safe in detention. It may also be argued that it's more beneficial, both for young people and for society, for young offenders to receive education rather than punishment. Additionally, it's said that prison doesn't work as a deterrent to crime, and young people in prison are likely to reoffend. But on the other hand, a lot of people believe that the most serious cases, such as murder, can only be punished with a prison sentence. It may also be argued that only a prison sentence will be adequate justice for the victim of a crime. And also it could be argued that although it might not always be the case, prison does deter some people from reoffending in the future. These are really, really tricky and complicated issues, so don't rush through the survey. Make sure you take your time and have a good think about each question before you answer. There's no rush at all. So another topic you'll be asked about is transport, environment, and rural affairs. This topic covers issues like the global climate emergency, the responsibilities of the food and retail industry in reducing single-use packaging, and discounts for particular groups of people using public transport in Scotland. So this is a particularly prominent conversation as the climate emergency is one of the defining issues of our generation. So for example, we want to know what you think about this statement. The global climate emergency is an issue of climate justice, where those who contribute least to greenhouse gas emissions are the most impacted. So before we finish this, let's just pause there to explain what we mean by climate justice. Climate justice is a term used to frame global warming as an ethical and political issue rather than one that's purely environmental or physical. Advocates of climate justice argue that the climate crisis has been overwhelmingly caused by rich countries, but has had a much greater impact on developing countries. So with that in mind, think about the following propositions. The countries most responsible for greenhouse gas emissions must be the first to reduce their emissions. They must share the benefits of their increased wealth and development with those countries impacted the most by climate change. And they must compensate loss and damage incurred in less developed countries as a result of climate change by contributing finances to a global fund, supporting research, and working on international cooperation. So those are quite wordy. Take a few minutes to go over all of those. You might want to pause the webinar here to give them a good read. And you can agree with none, some, or all three of those statements. So what do you think? Do you think it would balance things out if the responsible countries took these actions? You'll also be asked about jobs, economy, and fair work. So this topic covers issues such as the gender pay gap, zero-hour contracts, and adequate financial support for all citizens. So for example, employers should increase efforts to close the gender pay gap by improving equal opportunity policies, carrying out investigations into equal pay, having flexible working policies, and ensuring equal pay for equal work. So let's have a wee think about this. The gender pay gap is the average difference between hourly wages for men and women. The gender pay gap exists because there are more men than women in senior or higher paid roles. So you have to be careful with this one because people do often get a wee bit mixed up. The gender pay gap isn't the same as equal pay. So unequal pay is when women are paid less than men for doing the exact same work, whereas the gender pay gap refers to the wider structural reasons why more men than women are in higher paid roles. So there are many possible reasons for this, including caring responsibilities are shared unequally, part-time work is generally less senior. So if employers see part-time work as a woman's choice and a woman is therefore responsibility for her lower earnings, the pressure is off the employer to do anything about that. and women are likely to take on roles in caring sectors, which are generally still less valued and lower paid than a lot of other sectors. So how do we think about this? Go back to the questions and the provisions that we've suggested that employers could take to address the gender pay gap. You might agree with none, some, or all of those suggestions. Another important topic is health and well-being, which covers mental and physical health. So this topic will ask questions on protecting the NHS, responding to drug misuse and mental health training for all healthcare professionals. So for example, should the NHS be protected from privatisation, remaining free at the point of use? So this is a really relevant debate at the moment with the NHS at the forefront of conversations around the coronavirus outbreak. But the most commonly held view of those who hope to protect the NHS from privatisation is the moral argument that everyone deserves access to free healthcare, regardless of wealth or status. It's also argued that the most efficient way to provide good healthcare is for services to be publicly funded and publicly run. However, on the other hand, some people argue that the NHS doesn't allow them to have enough patient choice about what treatment they wish to have. It's also argued that those who founded the NHS didn't anticipate the ageing population that we're seeing now, which does have an effect of stretching NHS resources more than ever before. So I won't go into the rest of the topics in detail, but we will also want to hear your views on sport and leisure, external affairs, UK and international relations, equality and human rights, social security, and culture and media. And all of those will be asked about in the manifesto survey. The final section of our consultation will ask questions relating to the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the lives of young people in Scotland. So these will be 6 questions that will ask about the revisions you would like the government to make to ensure that the rights, opportunities, and concerns of young people are at the heart of political decision-making moving forward. Have we think about whether you agree or disagree with the following statements relating to the recovery from COVID-19. So, children and young people's rights should be at the forefront of decisions made during the COVID-19 crisis and the recovery process. Every young person in Scotland should have access to fast, reliable internet and devices to access the digital world, regardless of their geographical location or financial standing. Information must be made available in a youth-friendly and accessible manner, and the Scottish Government should ensure that young people's academic achievements aren't negatively impacted. So in a time of global instability, it's a matter of urgency for decision makers to listen and respond to the needs and concerns of Scotland's young people. For this to happen, we need as many of you as possible to continue to engage in politics despite the difficult circumstances. With your help, we hope to ensure that the youth voice is at the heart of political decision making in Scotland. Make sure you complete our manifesto survey before the 19th of September 2020, and please share the link with your pals as well. Completing the survey will also earn you 150 Young Scot reward points. If you don't have a Young Scot rewards account, it doesn't take long to set one up. You can just use your Young Scot National Entitlement card, and your points code will be shared with you at the end of the survey. If you have any questions on the manifesto, you can contact us at manifesto@syp.org.uk. You can also find us on Twitter as @officialSYP for updates and information on all things Scottish Youth Parliament. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you so much for helping us to amplify the voices of young people across Scotland.